Zom 100 might be the weirdest anime of 2023. The story follows Akira as he works a dead-end job for 3 years, when his career is suddenly short-ended by a zombie apocalypse. He then realizes he doesn't have to go to work anymore and starts a list of 100 things he wants to do before he dies. It's this premise that leads Zom 100 to become a bizarre adventure series, where Akira gets into all kinds of hijinks with a wide array of characters. In one chapter, he'll be riding away from zombies on a Harley. In one chapter, he'll meet a hairstylist and try out some dreadlocks. And in another chapter, he'll be piloting a mech. The premise of Zom 100 takes what would otherwise be a fairly generic zombie series, and turns it into something that only technically feels like a horror story. If anything, I'd say Zom 100 is like a zombie story with the positive tone and sense of adventure of One Piece. The characters are always under the threat of zombie attacks and global annihilation, but it's not always the sole focus of the story. And just before I explain how this plays out, be warned that there will be minor spoilers. But like I was saying, zombies are obviously an important part of the story. There is never an instant where a character might not be attacked by or turned into a zombie. This is made perfectly clear in Chapter 1. But as the story progresses, you start to sense how the zombies are almost more of a plot device. Each arc starts out with something Akira wants to cross off his list. In the following chapter, Akira decides he wants to relax and get drunk. So he goes to the store, grabs some beer, and meets one of the other main characters, Shizuka. Akira tries to get her number, to which Shizuka mocks Akira for risking his life for a few beers, then pieces out and steals his bike. If it weren't for the zombies, this would be a fairly boring chapter. Them being there adds intensity to the chapter and makes it exciting. They're not the focus of this chapter, rather they're one part of the chapter that helps to improve the overall reading experience. And this is pretty much how I would explain the premise of Zom 100 and why it's so much fun to read. It's built on a genre that everyone loves, but finds its personality in the many adventures the characters go on. And on that note, the characters actually add to the bizarre personality. But before I talk about these characters, make sure to like the video if you're enjoying it so far. It's the easiest way to support the channel, and it helps spread the video to other viewers like you. Okay, so we've already talked about Akira, but I can't cover the other characters without explaining why he works so well as the protagonist. Akira is a lot like many other main characters, especially in the world of manga. He's a young guy who's basically fresh out of college, and he's a happy-go-lucky character. Before his dead-end job, Akira was glowing with enthusiasm at the thought of his future career. And when that career finally ends, Akira sees it as an opportunity to get his life back. But what I like about Akira isn't his positive attitude per se. It's more the fact that he's just a fun character. A lot of time, the so-called good boy MC can be kinda boring, but Akira knows how to have fun. He finds joy in the little things, he has a go big or go home philosophy, and he goes out of his way to make his dream something that he and his friends can enjoy together. He's like the friend of the group that makes sure everyone is invited, and it makes him a great protagonist. Now, as a balance to that, we have Shizuka. Now, Shizuka comes off as a very dry, very antisocial character. But once she breaks out of her shell, you find out that Shizuka can be just as silly as Akira and the other characters. Raised as the daughter of a self-made billionaire, she was raised to be practical and always think of her future. So while Akira is out riding a Harley and drinking beers, Shizuka is running simulations, watching zombie movies for research, and buying sustainable resources. So having Shizuka in the group acts as a balance to Akira. Where Akira is the ambitious dreamer, Shizuka is the realist who offers expertise and strategy. For example, when Akira has to fight a zombie shark in the aquarium, Shizuka explains how sharks have special receptors in their nose that allow them to detect electromagnetic waves. So she tells Akira to use an electrical discharge to confuse the shark so it'll run away, to which Akira grabs some batteries and punches the shark in the face. And that's pretty much their dynamic. Shizuka does the thinking and Akira does the punching. But like I said, Shizuka is more than that. She may be more calm and collected, but she's just as silly as Akira. She freaks out when she sees the zombie shark. She looks at a new RV like she just found the cutest puppy ever, and she is prone to many meme faces. But I could go on about Shizuka, so let's move on to Akira's best friend, Kensho. Kensho is Akira's college buddy who got into real estate, but dreams of becoming a stand-up comedian. Obviously, his shtick is making people laugh. Now, admittedly, while I do think Kensho is funny at times, I don't think he's this constantly hilarious character. I will say his introduction had me dying, as Akira has to go hunt him down at a love hotel, and the way he can pick up just about any girl he wants and come up with jokes is pretty funny. But he's not so much the funny guy as he is the best friend, the pal that Akira can count on, and that's essentially his role. Kensho is the down-to-earth buddy that you can always count on. Now, not so down-to-earth is the German samurai girl the characters meet, driven to Japan for her love of its culture. Beatrix Amerhauser is probably the most bizarre member of the group on paper. She's like if Erza was an otaku that also happened to be from Germany. She'll be slicing people up in samurai armor in one moment, and then explaining the different kinds of sushi to Japanese natives in a thick German accent in another. And that's pretty much her deal. She's a cute character, she knows how to use a sword, and she offers insight on the history of Japan to both the characters and the readers. Now, as you can see, these characters make Zom 100 even more fun to read, because on top of the bizarre adventures, you have a cast of silly characters that are genuinely enjoyable, and make these adventures even better. And you would think a normie, an international banker, a stand-up comedian, and a German samurai girl would be kind of a mess, but it just works. Like I said, all it does is add to the personality of Zom 100. It helps it stand out not just as a story where there's all kinds of weird adventures, but also as a story with plenty of diverse characters. But maybe you're not sold on Zom 100 just yet. Maybe you're thinking, yeah, the premise is interesting enough and the characters seem pretty cool, but what's the point? Which is a perfectly valid question about a series where the characters just go on one adventure after another. When all they're doing is just crossing things off their bucket list, one would think that would get pretty boring. Thankfully, this isn't really the case in Zom 100. First of all, the pacing is done really well. I can't really attribute it to one trait in particular. Part of it is due to how relatively short these adventures are. They only last about 1 to 5 chapters, so you get just enough of each one to the point where it's satisfying and never overstays its welcome. But another part of the pacing is how each adventure offers new insight to the overall narrative. The first chapter, of course, sets up the story. The next few chapters highlight the importance of valuing social connections and investing in the people you care about. Then there's an arc where Akira and his friends run into an outpost run by his old boss. In this arc, Akira is forced into the same toxic dynamic he was at his job, and Shizuka is reminded of her toxic relationship with her father. I won't say too much more about how this plays out, but the characters essentially explore the topic of living life based on so-called needs versus following what they personally want to do, and how the difference between the two is the difference between being a human versus being a zombie. There's a lot of similar discussions like this, like later in the story when the characters move away from the city and into a rural town, and explore the irony of how you can live in something as densely populated as a city and somehow feel lonelier than you ever have. And that's the beauty of how this story is structured. As the characters go through the list, you're able to enjoy each individual adventure while also feeling like the story is making some kind of progress. It feels like it's working towards a goal rather than jumping from one place to another. And it's these kinds of topics that add a touch of reality to the strange world of Zom 100 and help flesh out its characters. But despite that, it's still one of the weirdest anime to come out this year. It's nothing like your typical zombie series. It's full of adventure and silly jokes and all kinds of crazy characters. And it's for these reasons that it'll probably end up as your next favorite. But what do you think? What was your reaction to Zom 100? Do you think it'll be the next big anime? Share your thoughts and see what everyone else has to say down in the comments. I'll pick my favorite and share it as comment of the week on my community tab. And if you'd like another discussion like this one, then check out my recent video on JJK. In that video, I explain how Gojo became a fan favorite character. You can find it in the playlist linked right here. Until then, thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.